Hi, I'm Veronica, and I'll tell you how I came to be a second grader at the age of 14. I've only recently moved back in town. My parents tell me I used to live in a high-rise apartment building a long time ago, but I barely remember that. My mom was born in the country, and she had 5 siblings. As soon as she graduated middle school, her mother told her to book it to the city and stop being a freeloader. Of course, if my mom were even remotely interested in studying, she'd go to a vocational school and learn a useful occupation. But all she had on her mind was marriage. She fancied herself the bride of a city guy with a splendid apartment, so all of her energy was dedicated to finding a match. She found a part-time job as a street sweeper's assistant because there wasn't really any other option for a semi-literate country girl. The street sweeper found her on a bench late at night and invited her into her utility room. That was where she stayed for a while. Early in the morning, as she was starting her shift, she saw a young man with a smashed face lying flat on his back upon a bench. It was unclear whether he was deeply asleep or if he had passed away. She approached him and shook his shoulder gently. He opened his eyes and groaned. She asked where he lived and offered her help. Her attention was actually welcome, and the man struggled to get on his feet. Mom helped him walk to his house nearby and then to his apartment. The stranger's home screamed neglect. Nobody had mopped the floors or cooked food there for ages. It smelled stale and dirty and abandoned. The man collapsed onto the sofa and promptly fell asleep. Mom proceeded to clean the apartment for about 3 hours. When the owner woke up, he looked around him in surprise and suggested that she stay at his place. Mom had nothing to lose and nowhere to go. That was how she, in fact, married a city man with his own place. Her dream came true. They were hardly happy. Mom assisted the street sweeper until she quit and promoted her assistant to take her place. Mom didn't hold the job for too long, though. She didn't enjoy getting up early, and she enjoyed pulling her weight at work even less. My dad wasn't a very responsible person either. He was lucky to inherit the apartment from his parents, but he didn't like working, or as he put it, slaving away for the man. He scraped by on irregular gigs, unloaded delivery trucks for supermarkets, or did the heavy lifting for furniture stores. When I was born, we were really pressed for money because none of them had a full-time job or stable income. Dad got microloans all the time. I don't really know why they didn't refuse an unemployed person who had nothing but an apartment. I suppose his loan suppliers were hoping to appropriate the place if he failed to settle his debt. The interest rates were unbelievable, and Dad's debt was growing in leaps and bounds. He needed to dig himself out of the hole somehow. As a last effort, Dad took the last of our savings and went gambling at cards. Not only did he lose everything, but he also ended up with a huge gambling debt on top of his microloan debt. People kept banging on our door demanding money. Where will we get it? With no full-time job, we'd often starve for days as it is. One day, Dad came home and told Mom to get me and whatever belongings we could carry. We left the city in the middle of the night. Dad sold the apartment to cover some of his gambling debt. We went off looking for a better life. I was 5 at the time. I remember walking for a long time. I kept asking for food and water, and we begged for bread when we passed through a village. Eventually, we reached a thick forest with no human settlements nearby. That was where we made our new home, and that was how I went from a city apartment to a mud hut in the boreal forest. I had salvaged a few books from a previous life. They were an ABC book and a book of fairy tales. I was hoping I'd learn to read one day. After a while, our life got pretty okay. We always have food, bounty of the land, as Dad used to say. Mom actually picked up because Dad's debt didn't stress her out anymore. We preserved lots of berries and mushrooms for the winter. One day, we heard tractors roaring nearby. They were harvesting wood. Dad asked if they had work for him, and they did. He earned enough money to buy flour that lasted us until spring. Mom baked flatbread on a makeshift stove. I learned my ABCs in the first winter and learned to read a year later. I read my books of fairy tales to tatters, and I was yearning for knowledge, but going back to the city was out of the question. 3 years later, Mom got pregnant and we became a family of 4. I remember her screaming in the night, Dad fussing over her, and then a baby crying. I was wondering where the baby had come from. In the morning, Mom and Dad introduced me to my new brother. I hoped we'd return to the city and I'd go to school now. Unfortunately, the baby was healthy enough that we didn't need to. My parents deprived me of school, classmates, and everything else that is the life of a normal child. Could we really spend our entire lives in a mud hut in a world full of TVs and mobile phones with high-speed internet? 5 more years later, my brother got sick. He had the symptoms of a common cold for a while. Then he started choking, his lips went blue, and his little hands were cold. He was generally skinny due to a lack of vitamins, I suppose. He didn't look 5. My parents reluctantly returned to the society but didn't go as far as the city. They occupied an abandoned house on the outskirts of a village. They claimed we had been homeless because of a fire. Mom took my brother to a hospital where he spent 3 months recovering from protracted pneumonia. And Dad took me to school. I had to study with first graders at 13, but I didn't care how out of place I looked. I was delighted to have people to talk to. I'm in 2nd grade now. I'm a straight A student and the occasional tease from my peers doesn't bother me.